We're back with another comparison, this time between the Sony ULTs for $350 or the Skullcandy Crusher ANC 2s for $300. Two of the most popular headphones for bass lovers right now. Let's get into it. Both of them come with a pretty similar hard shell case, roughly about the same size, similar color. I like the case better on the Sony ULTs because there's a little indentation here for the cables. The ANC just kind of has a hole and the cable fell out. Now starting with the Sonys, it's foldable. Plastic, of course, very lightweight and super comfy. The perfect squeeze where it's not gonna fall off your head, but it's also not creating any weird pressure. Nice ear pads, but they're not easily replaceable. I got the forest green, which definitely looks more like a gray than a green, but I like it. And all the button controls are on the left. You got your power button, noise cancellation and transparency, aux port, takes USB-C, and then the Alt button, which we'll get into later. Now for the ANC 2s, they are also foldable, made of plastic, of course, except it's got some fabric at the top here for the headband. They are noticeably heavier, so that headband does help sort of distribute the weight, but I find that heavier and just denser feel just makes them less comfy. But even today, I've been wearing them for a couple hours just listening to them, and it's fine. The ear pads are nice and squishy, but not easily replaceable too. I like the actual design of the ANC 2s better. They look better on the head. They don't stick out as much. And then you got buttons all over. There's this orange button for power, the Crusher dial button, which we'll talk about, the volume buttons on the right, the ANC knob thing. Takes USB-C, got an aux port. I'll take the design of the Skullcandies and the lightweight comfort of the ULTs. I'm gonna make this very simple. The Sony ULTs sound bassy. The Crusher ANC 2s feel bassy. The Sony has this Alt button. Press it once, it gives you bass mode 1. Press it again, and it gives you bass mode 2. The first bass mode is like setting the Crushers to 20% Crusher. And then the second bass mode is like setting the Crusher level to 50%. But even then, the ANC 2's haptic motors give you a completely different bass feel. And then cranking the Crusher levels even higher just puts these into a completely different bass league. But that's not always gonna be a good thing. Too much Crusher bass, depending on the song, can make it sound very muffled. There's definitely a balance if you plan on listening to a bunch of different genres. For the Sony ULTs, I've mostly been leaving it into mode 1. Allows me to shuffle between different genres, no problem. Everything sounds pretty consistent, just with a nice bass boost. Throw it in the second mode and it's gonna start raising that sub bass up, which does have its purpose given the right song, but it also introduces a bit more of that muddiness. I'm dying. Some loss of clarity, the volume sort of dips as it's blowing up more of the low. But recently I found going into the Sony app and changing the EQ to bright with mode 2 bass on seems to be a nice counterbalance where it's raising up those highs, but also keeping it really bassy. For the most part, these bass modes are really for rap, groovy R&B bass lines, some electronic. But if your priority is maximum clarity, don't buy headphones with bass modes. Aside from the bass, I do think the Sonys sound a bit better. They're a bit more spacious. The ANC 2s can get louder, but at the cost of more distortion at higher volumes. And also the highs on these can feel a bit harsher. But to be honest, I'm kind of nitpicking. I've been struggling trying to compare these two. They do sound pretty similar. And messing around with the EQ settings can really change a lot. It's really between who's performing better at bass, and I would have to give it to the ANC 2s. They just have such a more powerful feel to bass. But if you want to strike a better balance and you don't really care about feeling the bass 24/7, you just want a nice bassy sound when you're listening to a sick rap song, then these are also good. Obviously the bass modes are the biggest feature for these two headphones. They both got ANC and transparency modes, although the transparency on the Skullcandies is kind of a joke. The Sony's absolutely clear in this department. The ANC is better, the transparency mode is light years better. You can also activate the transparency on the Sonys by lifting your right hand to the ear cup, and it will automatically go into transparency mode. So if a bus driver is yapping, you'll be able to quickly hear it and get off at the right stop. Both got multi-point, yay. The Sony has 30 hours of battery life, and the ANC 2s have 50 hours of battery life. Both have fast charging, plug it in, within 10 minutes you'll have a couple hours. The Sony got ear detection, so when you take it off, it'll pause the music, put them back on, it will play. The ANC 2s do not. Sony has touch controls, the ANC uses buttons, and in a previous video I said I'll never like buttons better than touch control. Buttons work really well. I'll never find them as good as touch controls. Stop the cap. That was a complete lie. Now that I've used touch controls long enough, they're cool. But when you go to do an overhead stretch or something, accidentally tapping the ear cup and switching the song is kind of annoying. I've randomly paused songs, brought it back to the beginning while a good part was about to play. And while I'm not a huge fan of the buttons on the Skullcandies because they're kind of hard to tell which one is which and there's so many of them, I will take physical controls on a headphone any day. Unless they make touch controls even better, and then I'll be eating those words. They both have some type of personal sound EQ thing where it will run you through a hearing test and make a custom EQ based on your results. Sony got this adaptive sound thing which will use your phone and its location, and I'm assuming some of its sensors and stuff to figure out what you're doing and where you are in order to adjust the different transparency and ANC levels. So if you're on a bus, it'll crank the ANC, and if you're outside, it'll let in some noise to hear traffic and stuff. I've never used it, but it sounds cool. And the ANC2s have a voice control where you can go, "Hey Skullcandy, Spotify." Now it's playing music. "Hey Skullcandy, Crusher level down." I don't know if it did anything. It's kind of useless. And unfortunately, both are not sweat or water resistant.
Sorry, what'd you say?
ANC on.
Not gonna lie, there's a clear winner.
So for a connection test, I have my phone over by this tree, and I walked with the Sony ULTs first all the way to here, and then it was actually about here where I could do a full 360 without the music cutting out. And then same phone placement, I was walking with the Crusher ANC2s, and I could make it to about here before the music started cutting out. This is a microphone test outside. There's a little bit of a breeze. And this is the mic test of the ANC2. How's it sounding?
Even though the ANC2's got better bass, I think the design's better, I'm still going with the Sony ULTs personally. The two bass modes these got are good enough for me, and they're consistent. They're lighter and comfier, which I think is some huge points. Also the better active noise cancellation and way better transparency mode. Got lots of features. They're a bit more expensive, but find yourself a good deal or get a used pair like me. I got these for I think 150 bucks off. Let me know which one intrigues you more. And if you have either of these, let me know what you think of them. And thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Farewell.